Got an absolutely jam-packed show on tap for you guys tonight on this Friday. Going to start with the Denver Broncos. Let me check my notes here. 10-7 win over the Las Vegas Raiders. Yes, the score would indicate how incredibly boring that 3 hours of football was. It felt like 6 hours a game. Talk about that, why the Denver Broncos, I don't care about their 8-2 record. They are not Super Bowl contenders, and it mostly stems from the limitations of their quarterback, Bo Nix. Going to talk about that. Also, from time to time, you can dive into politics a little bit. Had an election on Tuesday that turned out pretty darn well for the Democrats. The Republicans, how will they respond? Discuss that on the show, what it means for America as a whole moving forward, potentially for next year's midterms. Why I'm 100% in favor of Rico Dowdle starting a GoFundMe page for the hip thrust celebration they learned via Key and Peele. I'm 100% on your side, Rico. It's all about that. And at the end of today's show, Week 10 NFL predictions, including Bryson's Bleak Bet, my episode of the week, which is a big one, and my favorite segment of all time, If I Were a Bettin Man. Carving it up on a Friday is absolutely jam-packed from start to finish. So let's drop the beat, baby. Here we go. All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube, as well as on X, Facebook, IG, and we are for the second straight time on Twitch. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by on this Friday. Jam-packed show. You already heard the rundown of what we've got to talk about today. And, you know, I got to say, ahead of predictions, because Friday, that's what we do on this show. That's what we do. To end every Friday show during the football season, it is one of my favorite segments, is doing NFL predictions. I am coming off of, without question, my worst predicting week of the year. All right, I was 6-8. Thank God I wasn't 6 and you know what I'm talking about. For the Gen Z audience out there, 0-3 on If I Were a Bettin Man. It's a brutal week. I feel great about this. I know it's not like a broken record. You know what? I feel terrible about If I Were a Bettin Man this week. Let's do that. Maybe some reverse engineering. Maybe that'll get me on track. The Bleak bet hit, which was kind of fitting for the week that I had. Under 500 against the spread. The upset of the week was wrong. Like my upset of the week this week. Predict all those games at the end of today's show. But let's talk about the game that kicked off week 10. But first, vintage Thursday night football's back, ladies and gentlemen. We are so back. We had kind of gotten spoiled this year. We got some good matchups between the Seahawks and the Cardinals, and we got some high-profile matchups like early in the season between the Packers and the Commanders, and games like that, right? We got some solid games. Steelers and Bengals, while it was heartbreaking for me as a Steelers fan, was an objectively phenomenal game. And then we got old school circa 2014-15 Thursday Night Football. Heck, circa 2024. We had a 6-3 Bears versus Seahawks game last year featuring the Denver Broncos, who beat the Las Vegas Raiders 10-7. And trust me, the game was as boring as the final score might predict. This is a crazy stat as to what happened yesterday. This game featured 13 3-and-outs between the two sides, 15 punts, 3 interceptions, 2 missed field goals, a blocked punt, 8 sacks. And for the Vegas Raiders, more than half of their drives did not exceed 2 yards. So it was, I feel if you love defensive shootouts, I guess this was your game. Like, we know how great of a defense Denver has. We know how bad of an offense Denver has. We'll talk about them, right now and talk about the Bo Nix of it all. Because when Bo Nix came out of college at Oregon, I didn't have as much trepidation on him as I had on J.J. McCarthy, who I didn't buy, and I got to admit, still to a degree, really don't buy at all. Like, yeah, McCarthy's got moxie. He was the product of an excellent running game at Michigan, great coaching staff, great defense to back him up. With all those things, he can be a solid quarterback. If he has to carry you in any way, shape, or form, there's going to be issues. Bo can make some throws that J.J. McCarthy can't. Bo has a better arm and I think is more athletic than J.J. McCarthy is. But I said prior to the 2024 draft, a lot of this is going to depend on where Bo Nix ends up. And that's the case with every quarterback. I mean, look at somebody like Sam Darnold, who's immensely more talented than Bo Nix. He ends up with the Jets, and he looks like a total bust for the first 2 years of his career. Then he ends up with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. It's like, oh, that's the Sam Darnold we were expecting. And now he's crushing it in Seattle with a solid staff and good offensive skill position players around him. A lot of it's where you end up. Bo Nix was one of those guys where just about all of his success was going to be hinged on where he ended up. Well, he got Sean Payton, future Hall of Fame head coach. He got arguably the best offensive line in football that Denver has invested in over the last years, really since Sean Payton became the head coach. He's got, I think, as far as I'm concerned, the best defensive football backing him up. Certainly the best pass rush. When the Denver Broncos, folks, are leading the NFL in sacks with 46. For context, second place has 28. Okay, so Denver is going to run away with the sack title. Benino, Zach Allen, who got away with a dirty hit on Geno Smith, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. Jonathan Cooper. Denver's unbelievable up front on both sides of the ball. They got the best offensive and defensive line combination in the whole NFL. Last year's Philadelphia, I think this year it's Denver. And they are not Super Bowl contenders. And I said it on Monday's show, and it has aged like fine wine, at least over the course of this week, is that, yes, the 8-2 record, 7 consecutive wins, and Sean Payton kind of talked about it at the game, like, yeah, we're not really playing that well on one side of the ball, but hey, we've won 7 in a row. We're the first team in the NFL to get to 8 wins. Congrats. Not a Super Bowl contender. Folks, we've seen this every single season for the last half decade or so. The 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers started 11-0. Oh my gosh, the Steelers could. No, they're not going to do anything. Ended up collapsing in the last month of the season and got bounced by the darn Browns at home in the wild card round. 2021, the Cardinals, with the last unbeaten team left, faltered down the stretch, got blown out in their first playoff game. 2022 Vikings, I think they won 13 games and had a negative point differential. Why? Because they were winning a bunch of close games, and their losses, they got the doors blown off them. Lost in the first round. 2023 Eagles got off to a hot start, faltered down the stretch, winning a lot of close games, winning games they really shouldn't have, got the doors blown off them the first round. You say, what about last year's Chiefs? A few things. A, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, enough said. 2, their close games, save for the Raiders game on Black Friday, were all against good teams. They were against the Ravens and against teams like, the Houston Texans. Cincinnati was good, playoff adjacent. Denver was good last year. They were against Buffalo, was a close loss. Some of the top teams in the AFC. This year's Broncos team, and can we show Bo Nix's stat line yesterday? I mean, he was horrible. A touchdown, 2 picks, 57% completion, 150 passing yards, a passer rating of 54, which is awful. QBR 0 to 100 of 27. And the Broncos scored 10 points. I see my guy, Pierce DeLuna, by the way, First and Tuna, who I had on the podcast about a month ago, just talking about the Rams. Shout out to him. He says that it was good old color rush TNF boring, and I loved it. Like our forefathers wanted. Yeah, it was, I guess, aesthetically pleasing as far as the Indians were concerned. As far as the game itself, awful. But for Bo Nix, I've said it over and over this year. Forget just the inability to make the deep throws. Because if you look at Denver's offense, their passing game in particular, because they run the football really effectively with R.J. Harvey, J.K. Dobbins, who I think Dobbins may have gotten hurt last night or might be out for a significant amount of time. Good news is the Broncos, I think, play like 1 game in the next 23 days, so plenty of time for him to heal up. They run the football well. They totally dominate the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. But if you look at their passing game, guys are schemed open. Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Evan Ingram, these guys are open. And Bo Nix is just missing them. Let's show Bo Nix's numbers over the course of this year because he's been a bad quarterback. Yes, tied for second in touchdown passes, but only 7 of those 18 have come on deep throws. So 11 of the 18 have come within the red zone. So Bo Nix has not been just throwing it all over the yard, so to speak. He is 29th in completion percentage, 20th in pass yards per game, 27th in passer rating, 19th in QBR. That says 10 team points. That should say, where the Broncos rank in scoring this year, which I think is somewhere in the bottom half of the NFL. But I brought out the stat on Monday's show after they barely survived the Davis Mills Houston Texans. Is that since week 5, Denver is 3-0 in which they've trailed by 8 or more points in the fourth quarter. The rest of the NFL, 3-54. So it's not sustainable. Not a team quarterback by Bo Nix. A team quarterback by Mahomes last year? Yeah. If a Josh Allen team is kind of winning by the skin of their teeth, it's like, well, they got Josh Allen, they'll figure it out. Josh tends to be great in the playoffs. Mahomes is legendary in the playoffs. If you have teams that have had perennial playoff success year in and year out and year in and year out, okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there. Denver has not won a playoff game since Peyton Manning was there. And I think their failure this season, because they're the 2020 Steelers, 21 Cardinals, 22 Vikings, 23 Eagles. That's who they are. By the way, all of those teams, really talented. In just about all of those examples, good coaching, coaches that we like, quarterbacks in some cases that we like. But there's an element of, do you have blowout ability with you? I mean, this team is struggling to get out of jail against the dang Jets. They won 13-11 against the Jets on the road in London. So, this is not a team that is, again, just close your eyes. Did someone call it the confetti theory? I forget what it was called, but whoever came up with that, it's a good, terminology for this. Confetti theory. Close your eyes. And can you see Bo Nix, Sean Payton, some of the major players for the Denver Broncos, Courtland Sutton, Zach Allen, Benito, all these guys, holding Lombardi Trophy at Levi Stadium, Santa Clara, California, confetti falls from the sky? Can you see that? Can you see 3 consecutive minimum playoff wins, and in all likelihood, 4 consecutive playoff wins for them to win the title? They'll probably win a playoff game. I could absolutely see that. If they get a good matchup against, if they're the 5 seed, because let's be honest, Kansas City's running them down for the division. There's no way the Chiefs are going to come behind this team after how they're playing offensively and how Bo Nix is playing as of late. But if they're the 5 seed and they get a favorable matchup against maybe the AFC North champion, or say maybe the Colts come back down to earth and Jacksonville runs them down for the division, yeah, sure, they can win a playoff game. But in round 2 against a Buffalo, a Kansas City, heck, a New England, they're dead in the water. Like, they're not winning those games. And it will have nothing to do with their defense. But they have no explosiveness in their offense. Kudos to them for some of these fourth quarter comebacks against Philadelphia, the Giants. Kudos. The Texans, which Texans got a great defense, but you should blow out a team when your defense gives up 15 points, especially when the defense is giving up 15 points to the backup to CJ Stroud with a bad O-line. So I watched that last night, and it's just validation for everything I've said about this Broncos team for the last few weeks. Like, yes, they're clutch. Yes, they come up big in the final moments. Kudos. But their offense, I shouldn't say their offense. It looks hard for Bo Nix. And it shouldn't, given the great protection he has. I think Denver's given up the least amount of sacks in all of football. They run the ball effectively with Harvey and with J.K. Dobbins. They've got solid weapons with Courtland Sutton and Marvin Mims and Evan Ingram, who was wide open on a touchdown that Bo Nix missed him badly on last night. The guys are being schemed open. And Bo's just missing them. I mean, he's completing barely 60% of his throws, guys. Like, he's not accurate. And if you're not a naturally accurate quarterback, you've got to bring some sort of, okay, he's got a gigantic arm, or he's crazy mobile. Bo Nix can move. Bo Nix can run. He had 2 touchdowns rushing against the Giants in that comeback. He can move. But accuracy was kind of the thing for Bo Nix. Like, if he delivers the ball on time and on target. He did that last year. He's not done that in 2025. It feels like Sean Payton's putting more on his shoulders, and again, he can develop. He can get better. But as of right now, year 2, he's not showing that. And Bo Nix talked after the game about the Denver Broncos' offensive struggles.
I think you guys stay level-headed. You got to understand that it is the NFL, and 7 wins in a row is hard to come by. So you're doing something right, but at the same time, you're also doing something wrong because there's plenty left on the table, I think. And between penalties and just some sluggish football, we're just not playing very good. And it starts with me. I got to be better, and then the rest of the guys will follow along. But we got to find some juice somewhere. We got to find something, and especially against a good defense like that, there's plays to be had. We just got to find them.
I mean, he is right that there are plays to be had. The guys are open. I mean, I talked about this all the way back to week 3. Remember that week 3? It's actually the last game that they lost to this point. It was to the Chargers. It was when Herbert made that insane play, tying touchdown to Keenan Allen, and Dicker, the kicker, walked it off and to end the game. Is that throughout that contest, outside of a 4th down throw to Courtland Sutton, it was, God, you are missing layups, Bo Nix. You are missing Courtland Sutton down the field when he's got 3 yards of separation on the DB. Like, you hit him in stride. Like, Greg Olsen talks about all the time. Greg Olsen, who former tight end, does an awesome job on Fox. He said this on a broadcast like it was at the beginning of the season. I've held on to it since because it's such a smart point. If you're going to miss a receiver downfield, underthrow him. Don't overthrow him. If you underthrow him, maybe he gets a chance to, Tyreek's done this with Tua back in the day, but stop on a dime and kind of almost fair catch it to a degree, or maybe you draw a pass interference. At least maybe something good can happen on an underthrow. An overthrow, no one can get it. Maybe a safety playing center field can get it, and then it's a disaster. Then it's a turnover. But he's missing the layups. He's missing the deep throws. And again, it's not like these guys aren't open, and it's not like he's getting an inordinate amount of protection. That's the wild thing with Bo Nix. I mean, one could argue that of all of the 2024 rookies, he was set up in the best situation to succeed. Maybe J.J. McCarthy as well, but the Vikings' offensive line hasn't been great. You can make a case. O-line in Denver's awesome. Defense, especially the D-line, is off the charts. Receivers are not to die for, but they're pretty darn good. And they're open. Great coach, Sean Payton. I don't know. Again, the 3rd down short call by Sean Payton was weird, but I don't see it, man. I'm not saying he can get better, because I was a believer in Bo Nix with Sean Payton specifically in that system. But even in this system, it's not really working offensively. They're winning. Kudos. You never apologize for winning the NFL. But that ain't a team that's going to win 3 or 4 playoff games in a row. I can tell you that right now. I've said it all year, but I'll certainly say it today. That team ain't beating Kansas City for the division. Because last I checked, Chiefs control their own destiny. They're going to beat Denver twice this year, including next Sunday. Okay, so I got to get a drink of water for this one. So, whew, man, oh man. So we got some absolutely tragic news over the last few days. Yesterday morning in particular, to be specific. Marshon Kneeland, defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys, took his own life yesterday. Or late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, took his own life at the age of 24. And so, first, and before I even get to any of my take on any of this and mental health itself, just thoughts and prayers with his girlfriend, his family, his teammates with the Dallas Cowboys, former teammates, friends, everyone who's ever known him or were close to this young man. I am just gutted for you right now. For this to happen so sudden, and for this to happen, the thing that everyone keeps harping on is for this to have happened 3 days, or not even a full 72 hours removed from the young man scoring his very first touchdown in the NFL. Here's the picture. This is when he recovered. Sam Williams blocked a punt against the Cardinals. Ball bounced the end zone, and none of the Marshon Kneeland falls on the ball for his first NFL touchdown. He's a second-year player out of Western Michigan. First time getting in the end zone. And he's gone by mid to late week. So I'm going to start with the Cowboys part of this and then get to the mental health side, because the fact of the matter is we do have some information on what was going on. We know that his family and his girlfriend in particular had expressed that they talked about how he had expressed suicidal thoughts and they had concerns about this, and he had sent a goodbye group text to his family. So we know clearly there had been something going on that had concerned the family enough to where they called law enforcement, and unfortunately they weren't able to reach him in time. On the Cowboys front of this, and shout out to Jane Slater, who does an amazing job on the NFL Network covering this team. She made this point yesterday on Good Morning Football, and I think she's spot on. Is that, everyone goes through grief, but the Cowboys are uniquely positioned as a locker room to grieve the loss of their brother, because and Jane pointed out, Brian Schottenheimer, obviously he lost his father, the great Marty Schottenheimer, a few years ago to an illness, and Dak Prescott not only lost his mom to colon cancer almost exactly 12 years ago, but lost his oldest brother 5 years ago to suicide. And as a matter of fact, Dak actually talked about Solomon Thomas, by the way, someone else, Solomon Thomas, who plays for the Cowboys, who I'm sure knew Marshon Kneeland very well because he's also a defensive lineman. He was in those meeting rooms with the young guy, and he lost his sister. He's to similar circumstances. He's also been open and talking about mental health. But Dak Prescott actually yesterday was getting his number retired and honored at his old high school. He was there. His fiance, the kids were there. And this is what Dak had to say about the loss of Marshon Kneeland yesterday. Take a listen.
Yeah, it's been a very tough day. As you said, it started early this morning, finding out the news. Tragic loss. I hurt. Heavy heart today. I heard for Marshon. I heard for his family. I heard for his girlfriend. I heard for every single one of my teammates. This is a pain that you don't wish upon anybody. You wish none of us had to go through this. You wish Marshon didn't have to go through what he went through. And just thankful for each moment we have in this life, and don't take it for granted. and hug and love on those that you do. It's okay to feel however you're feeling. And I'll tell you first and foremost, I don't always have the answers. And today's not a day that I felt like I had answers. Triggering day for many reasons, on top of just knowing that this was a had today, and hard to balance my emotions today, and not a day that I have words other than I love you for friends and families and people who may be struggling. Yeah, that I love them. Obviously, we had a Zoom call, and a few people that spoke did an amazing job. But as I said, it's tell that person how I feel about them when I see them. Tough moment for this team. As I said, I feel and hurt for everybody that's involved in this, and Marshon's families and loved ones.
I mean, again, Dak has been, because the Cowboys are on their bye week, which is why he alluded to them having a Zoom meeting the day that they lost their teammate. And the reason I showed the picture that I showed along with the audio of Dak was because you can see on his wrist, and he does this from time to time, he writes, ask for, his number 4, ask for help. Talk about mental health, which Dak has been vocal about for the last 5 years. Man. So on the mental health front, we're going to learn more about what was plaguing Marshon Kneeland as time goes on, I'm sure. As this with any tragedy that happens so suddenly, people are rushing to gather information. Like my first reaction after I got, after the initial shock hit, after I saw the news yesterday, was, oh my gosh, was he in a car accident? And usually if someone passes in that manner, it's usually reported along with their passing. So-and-so died in a car crash. When that wasn't reported, I automatically assumed that he had took his own life. We do know that Marshon Kneeland lost his mother last year. Matter of fact, he actually had a chain that had her ashes in it. And so you imagine that this was something that affected him very deeply, as it would pretty much all of us. The loss of a parent. And, oftentimes we hear the phrase, and it's well-intentioned. It is. And I've even said it on this show before, that it's okay not to be okay. And on its surface, that's a true statement. Like, you're never going to be 100% all the time, of course. We're humans. People go through emotions. People go through hard times. But it's not okay to stay not okay. In that you can, like, whether it's getting, talking to somebody in your family, whether it's, or a close person in your life, or whether it's seeking help from a professional, from a therapist, or it could be medication, like whatever the case may be, is that we know that there's a stigma among young men, particularly in this country, where any honesty about how you're doing internally is perceived as weakness, is perceived as emasculating in some ways, and it's unbelievably detrimental to all men, especially people with similar circumstances to Marshon Kneeland. And I guess what I would say is, societally, we've made strides in this regard. I'm not trying to act like there's been no progress in this department, but let's make it more, what's the best way I can put this? Let's make it more in vogue, I guess, is the best way I know how to phrase that, for men to be open about their emotions. Because being masculine is not about putting on a brave face and basically kind of being a robot. That's not masculine. That's suppressing yourself to the point where you become a lesser version of yourself. And by becoming a lesser version of yourself, you're a lesser father and husband and brother and son and all of these things. If you don't feel comfortable, whether it's internally, whether it's external circumstances around you, maybe you don't have people in your life that you feel comfortable with. And a lot of the reasons that people don't feel comfortable, that men don't feel comfortable expressing their emotions. And this is, oh my gosh, this is the greatest lie that mental illness, but depression in particular, will tell you. is that you are the only person in the world going through what you're going through. I don't know what Marshon Kneeland was experiencing mentally, at least specifically, in the days and hours and moments leading up to his passing. I would just about guarantee, I'd bet every dollar I got, that he felt like he was the only person going through what he was going through. And that's why talking to somebody, especially talking to somebody who's been through similar circumstances and come out of the other side better for it, or kind of not better, better for addressing those concerns, is that you feel like you got a partner in the fight or partners in the fight. It brings you clarity, like I've got something more to live for than just the demons that are plaguing me on a day-to-day basis. And again, I'm no therapist. I'm no expert in this department. But that is something that we've made progress on, but we do have to do better as a society, is allowing individuals the space to be open and honest about how they're feeling. And in doing so, I mean, there's no stigma. I've said this many times on my show. If someone breaks their leg and they don't go to the hospital to get it treated, we judge them for not getting treatment. We're like, the heck you doing, bro? You got a broken leg. Go to the hospital. Get it fixed. There's no stigma. It's like, because we can see it. We can see legs in a spot where it's not supposed to be. Or take any injury. That doesn't look like the way that it should look. We need to get help for that. There's no stigma around that. It's the things that you can't see, at least on the surface. Some people mask it well. Some people put on, Robin Williams is somebody who, again, maybe had different circumstances mentally than Marshon Kneeland did, but obviously their lives ended the same way. Robin Williams was the ultimate, charismatic and, one of the greatest, I could talk about Robin Williams on Monday, one of the greatest comedians who ever lived. Uber talented, brought joy. I mean, I saw a video on the internet the other day of him. There was a gorilla that he had met, and she had lost her family in some tragic accident, and he had made that gorilla smile or express happy emotions for the first time in 6 months. Robin Williams could make animals happy, certainly humans. But internally, it was hell for that man. Some people hide it well. Some people lash out because that's the only way that they can get out what they need to get out, because it's just suppressed in them. They don't feel like they can be honest about it in a healthy way. Boy, oh boy. Heartbreaks for that young man's family. Praying for his girlfriend, for his family members, for his teammates with the Cowboys, everyone he was close to in his life. The best thing I can say moving forward when any of this ever happens is, man, we got to talk. We got to be able to create a safe space for people without the stigmas of years past of what it is to be a man. That there's a lot of elements that goes into being masculine, that goes into being a great man, father, husband, the whole bit. Keeping your emotions bottled up is not one of them. Being strong for your family emotionally, yeah, that is absolutely one of them. But not doing so to a point where it is internally killing you. Praying for this young man's family. Praying to the good Lord that he has found peace that he didn't have at the end of his life. That's all I can say. Marshon Kneeland, 24 years old. May he rest in peace. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Thanks to everybody again for stopping by on a Friday. Well, sometimes on this show, I will dabble into the world of politics and entertainment if I find the story to be real enough. And I'll be honest too. In the political realm, I do so because it's something I've always been fascinated with my whole life. I've said over and over and over and over again on the show is the fact that I have been an observer, a fan, a student, if you will, of presidential history longer than I've been a fan of sports. Like it's always been a passion of mine. I've always loved it. And by that love comes my deep interest in politics. And it's one that I think just about everybody shares. And so I think it wouldn't have felt right to not discuss the elections that we had certain parts of the country on Tuesday, which I didn't talk about on Wednesday's show because I want to kind of let the dust settle a little bit. I mean, I did this during last year's election, which obviously had far greater consequences, with the presidency and with the Senate House, the whole bit. I didn't do a reaction until Friday because I want to let the dust settle. I wanted to see kind of some exit polls, some stuff that people were saying, and get a clear-eyed view than just immediate reaction day after. Because the fact of the matter is, it's hard to gauge how people voted in the immediate aftermath of an election. And so and plus Wednesday's show was just absolutely jam-packed with topics that were more pressing in that particular moment in time. So in this instance, obviously the most notable race, the one that garnered the most attention nationwide, was one that affects not a state, but a city. Now, pretty darn massive city, New York City, with Zohran Mamdani, Democratic Socialist, winning that election over Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Lewa. He is going to replace Eric Adams, who ended up having to basically drop out of the race because of the fact that, due to corruption, due to the fact that New Yorkers were deeply dissatisfied with his governorship. Or his leadership, rather, governing the state of the city of New York City. So Zohran Mamdani is going to take place. And regardless of your views of Mamdani, of his policies in particular, of which, I'll be honest, I've always said on the show that I am a political independent. I tend to lean left on most issues. I lean right on some. And so you could classify me as like a political centrist who has somewhat of a left bias. That's where I've leaned for most of my life. And so on some of the policies, I don't know how practical they are. Free busing, the free grocery stores, or government regulated grocery stores, I should say government controlled grocery stores. Not sure how practical that is. But here's where I got to give the young man credit. He's 34 years old. He's a kid in politics, especially in today's politics. My gosh. Is something that he got. Something that he understood implicitly. The part of the reason he entered the race, and no one knew who the heck this guy was. I didn't know who Zohran Mamdani was till like the summer. I mean, I'd never heard of this guy. He's assemblyman in New York City. Okay, never heard of him. Entered the race with a 1% chance to win, polling at 1% for New York City mayor. He understood the clear messaging of what he had to bring to the table, in large part because he listened to the voters. Boy, that is something the Democratic Party can learn something from. Listening to your constituents, listening to your base. If you go back to last year's presidential election, and I said it my first show afterwards, I did like a 20-minute post-mortem on Trump's victory over Kamala Harris, coming back to the White House and honestly completing the most unlikely political comeback we've ever seen in politics, is that regardless of your views on Trump, and just about all of mine are negative, I've made that abundantly clear on this show. I'm not a fan of him, to say the very least. You tended to know what he was about. Again, positively or negatively, you knew where the Trump campaign stood. Part of it's because he's had 3 straight presidential campaigns to run, so you have an idea of who Trump is. With Kamala Harris and with the Democrats in particular, nail down an issue that was like, okay, that's their winning issue. The only one you could come up with was democracy, an issue of which I think they were absolutely correct on. Here's the problem. If you are going to run under the Trump is a threat to democracy tagline, so to speak, and pretty much, I don't want to say ignore, but put every other issue on the back burner, after the majority of an unpopular President Joe Biden's term consisted of a certain level of inflation that people were not comfortable with, you're just throwing the economy to the side. James Carville, strategist for Bill Clinton, famously said, it's the economy, stupid. If you're just going to throw that to the side, the single mom who's working multiple jobs, who's just trying to keep food on the table for her kids, just trying to make ends meet, it's not that she doesn't care about democracy. And that's where liberal elites have really gotten under my skin over the last year. So it's like, oh, hey, who cares about... That's easy for you to say in your ivory tower. For someone who's struggling every day just to make it, it's not that they don't care about democracy. It's that long-term democracy is obviously more important than the economy today. The health of our country is at stake in that regard. You're not thinking long-term when you're struggling to make ends meet. You're not. Like you can't. You're just trying to get to the next day with food in your stomach, food in your kid's stomach, making sure that you've got money in your pocket to be able to supply all of your basic needs and the needs of your family if that situation calls for it, obviously. Trump hit, and I think his solutions, as we're seeing today, are atrocious to those problems, but Trump stuck to those. Kamala Harris and the Democrats really didn't. Zohran Mamdani did. Ask any New Yorker. Man, this place is really expensive to live. Like it is. Whew! Like it is rents out is off the chain. Going to athletic events at Yankee Stadium or Citi Field or Madison Square Garden or different state, but MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, it's ridiculous. Going to concerts and events, everything's expensive in this city. And so we got a young guy who no one's ever heard of until this year who's like, hey, I'll fix that. In large part, and again, this is New York City, Trump's federal level because he's the president of the United States, but wait a second. This guy said he'd bring prices down on day one. It's been more than one day. We're almost a year into his first, almost a year into his first year of his second term. Prices ain't come down, dude. Like, we're kind of waiting on results. And this guy comes in saying, I'll fix it. At least in this city I can, or I'll do my best to. Is that, and there's a lot of layers in this. Because, he himself, to his credit, he's been open and honest about it. I am a democratic socialist. And that S word tends to really freak out a lot of people. So much so, like, even Bernie Sanders, who is kind of, I would say, the most well-known, quote-unquote, socialist politician that we have in this country. Certainly in the federal government, in the Senate. Even he will hesitate to outright say, yes, I am a socialist. I would say Mamdani leans for a little bit further left than Bernie does. When you talk about, because this is what won Trump the election, this is one of the things that won Trump the election last year, was the disgruntled Bernie Sanders voter. And I don't think I've ever talked about that. I've talked about this with people anytime this subject has come up. I don't think I've ever talked about it in this show, but I think it is a very real thing. The disgruntled Bernie Sanders supporter, they're behind him. He's got this really, this big base, and they're excited for this guy. And oh my gosh, he's going to bring the prices down and universal health care and raise the minimum wage, all these things. Until, and this, I think at this point, we're almost a decade removed from the 2016 election. I think it's almost a well-known fact at this point, is that the Democratic establishment, the Hillary Clintons of the world, intervened, interfered, and made sure that Hillary got the nomination because it was her time rather than who the voters wanted. And how did that work out for the Democrats in 2016? You can even make a case that Bernie might have been screwed over in 2020 when Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina intervened, got a lot of black support behind Joe Biden. Joe Biden ends up winning the nomination. Kudos to him. He ended up winning that election. I think just about any Democrat would have won the election in 2020 based on the circumstances, but hey, kudos. Is that when you have the Bernie Sanders supporters of the world, because that's a broad base, folks. I think we're seeing that. And you get around to 2024. And the whole thing is, this is what Democrats would say. We like Bernie, but just too old. And you got Joe Biden, 81 going on 82 years old, and saying, hey, we think he's going to make it to 86 at the end of his second term. It's like, wait a second. You said our guy was too old and he was in his late 70s. Biden's the first president to make it to his 80s, and now you're saying he's just fine, but Bernie was too old? Despite the clear energy gap between the two that they bring to the table. I mean, Bernie's in his mid-80s and still is just, still bring the same fervor that he's always brought. People age differently. We know this. Is that they look at the Democratic Party. They basically don't have a primary in 2024. Biden drops out last second. Kamala Harris is essentially selected to be the nominee. And it's like, wait a second, you didn't give us a choice this go around. At least we had a choice in 2016, 2020, even though you screwed our candidate over twice. Now we don't get a say at all. But you're telling us, hey, get behind our candidate. It's like, no, you have suppressed our vote. You have suppressed how the concerns that we raise about the economy, about the minimum wage, about cost of living. Don't know if we're going to like what Trump's doing, but he's at least talking about it. A lot of Bernie Sanders supporters went the way of Trump. I mean, just in the podcast sphere, Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and a lot of these, Andrew Schultz, like a lot of these big name prominent podcasters who were big Bernie Sanders supporters went in the direction of Trump. Disagree with that, but there's a part of me that kind of gets it. Is that if you're going to be the party that talks about democracy and you won't even have a primary. Like, what? Your candidate was not, again, she got all the delegates to her credit, but like this is a situation where, okay, it's a competitive field and Kamala Harris came out on top. She didn't get a single vote in 2020. So the Bernie Sanders voter is a real thing. And when the Bernie Sanders voter, when the moderates, when the independents, which, make up the vast majority of voters, there's way more independents than there are Republicans and Democrats voting in elections. When Trump says he's going to bring the prices down day one, and that has not been the case. When Trump says, hey, I'm going to close the border. We had a border crisis, no question about it. But then he and ICE, Kristi Noem, go beyond the pale of not just going after legal migrants, not just going after American citizens, but like almost with this smug, like, yeah, we can just take anybody off the street. And if you don't support us, that means you're not patriotic. So people see that like, I don't like that. That's immoral. That's not cool. That's not America. We don't just drag people off the streets. Guys with masks on. We don't do that to legal citizens. They see that, oh, he's the anti-war president. You're bombing Venezuelan ships. Russia, Ukraine, last I checked, they're still fighting. He said he did that war in day one. Is that when, and it's kind of the cardinal sin in politics. Under promise, over deliver. Now that's easier said than done because if you're going to run for office, you kind of got to make big promises in order to get the requisite base around you. But Trump, he's known for big promises. He was going to build that wall, obviously. It was his 2016 platform. Is that when they see that you're not delivering? When they see that, okay, hey, the second Trump turn, like he knows what he's doing this go round. He's not going to go with the old Republican corrupt establishment. He's going to get outsiders. And then proceeds to do the things that in some cases he said he wasn't going to do. When ICE is behaving the way that they have behaved over the course of this year. When you have a situation where, you demolish the east wing of the White House despite the fact that not a single person thought that was a decent idea. So you just destroy a third of the White House, the history that's involved in that to build a golden ballroom. So that now, as of this past Saturday, when everyday Americans are losing their SNAP benefits, can't freaking put food on the table without average everyday Americans, and kudos to them. There's a guy in Pittsburgh I saw doing this. Brad Paisley and his wife are doing an unbelievable work with their organization, is that everyday citizens are stepping in and being able to supply the requisite food and necessary needs that folks who are struggling need in that moment. Meanwhile, the President of the United States is out here having literally a Great Gatsby themed party. The White House is coated in gold. Well, that doesn't seem too relatable, and it goes back to something that I have said for years on this show. Donald Trump told a lot of lies, pulled a lot of cons, well throughout his life, well before he got into politics. He's a con man. The greatest con that man ever pulled was that he cares about the everyday American citizen. So when you have someone who is, let's keep it a buck, like who is on the extreme side of the left in Zoran Mamdani, but he steps up and says, I hear your concerns. The president isn't delivering federally. Mayor Adams isn't delivering here in New York City. I'll fix it. I will listen to your concerns. And let me tell you something, folks. This is where Mamdani deserves a ton of credit. You could not get that man off message. You couldn't. You could not get that man off message. Is that, he could be asked anything. Cost of living in New York City. He was always focused on that. And he ran a masterful campaign in that regard. You look at situations like Abigail Spanberger, who wins governor in Virginia. You think about Mikey Sherrill, who wins governor in New Jersey. Is that this very well, didn't mean to hit the table there. This very well could be a precursor for the 2026 midterms, because the fact of the matter is, virtually every single president, particularly unpopular presidents, of which Trump is unpopular, as we say here today, sometimes lose badly in the midterms. His first midterms in office. Really, the only exceptions are Bush, who was very popular as of 2002. This was kind of prior to the Iraq War. FDR, 1934. Like, there are examples. There are outliers. Generally, the rule kind of stands. They call it the midterm curse. Like, it's a real thing. Is that when you have a president who makes big and bold promises and not only doesn't deliver the promises, but in some cases does the exact opposite of what he promised to do. So, and the last take I have about this, because, there's a clear ideological war being fought in the Democratic Party. There's no question about it. Like, is it going to be the Zohran Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, AOC wing of the party, or is it going to be the, kind of the moderates? Is it going to be the establishment Democrats like a Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries or people like that? And I guess what I would say to that is there's really no way to tell. There's not. Every election, I'm just using presidential elections, but 2008 when Obama won. Yep, you know what? We are in a post-racial America. Yeah, that was nonsense as we see today. Obama wins re-election in 2012. This proves the Republicans who lost with Mitt Romney, they need to find somebody who's in a younger generation, appeals to more voters, and they decided to come up with, at the time, the oldest president in history, Donald Trump. And the Democrats, they need to respond. Well, they younger, more vibrant. They chose Joe Biden. And then in 2024, Republicans need to ditch Trump. They stuck with him, and he won. Like, the fact of the matter is, we don't know. This is why I despise polls, by the way. We don't know until the people cast their vote. Is that, to me, the only thing that is clear about the elections on Tuesday, and I think if the Democrats play their cards right, the midterms next year, is if people are against authoritarianism, people who are running for office against authoritarianism, of which this president, his administration have clearly implemented policies that would mirror such, they're probably gonna win. And if you're clear on message, by the way, and you listen to your voters, Democrats have gotten in a lot of trouble, shot themselves in the foot not doing that. Screw Bernie Sanders over in back-to-back primaries, 2016, 2020. Didn't even have a freaking primary in 2024. Really? Dean Phillips, come on. No offense to Dean Phillips, but come on. So that's where we're at. So that's kind of my takeaway from the elections on Tuesday. I think anyone, I know the moderates are like, forget what happened with Mamdani in New York. That's just one city. Spanberger and Mickey Sherrill, Mikey Sherrill, that's the way of the party. And folks in New York who are big Mamdani supporters are like, no, this is the way to go, because look at the popularity that he has gained in such a short span of time. We don't know until we know. That's what I would say. And I know being a political pundit is very, very similar to doing what I mostly do on the show, and that's discuss sports. We're all projecting. We're all guessing for the future based on the evidence that we have in the here and now. But you don't know until you know. So there we go. Okay, I saw this story, and I absolutely positively loved it. Loved it. Rico Dowdle. He's a running back for the Carolina Panthers, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys. And again, if not for the success of Javonte Williams, Cowboys fans are like, why didn't we bring this guy back? Because Rico Dowdle gets signed with the Panthers. No one pays attention to it. It's Rico Dowdle. Who cares? Chuba Hubbard goes down for the Panthers. Rico Dowdle steps in, and he's been one of the 5 most productive backs in the NFL. He's been sensational. He has been the most valuable player of that Carolina Panthers offense, by far. So he scores a touchdown on Sunday at Lambeau Field. It's the only touchdown the Panthers scored. He scores a touchdown at Lambeau. And his celebration, he does a hip thrust. So he goes 1, 2. Referees throw the flag. And he's like, wait a second. I know that I watched Key and Peele back in the day. And with Keegan-Michael Key, the great Keegan-Michael Key, Jordan Peele, Keegan-Michael Key playing Hingle McCringleberry, the great wide receiver from Penn State University, of course, as we all know, scores a touchdown, 1 hip thrust, no flag. 2 hip thrust, no flag. Jordan Peele's playing the referee. Jordan Peele's watching his hip. 3 hip thrust. Yellow laundry comes out in the field. 15-yard penalty on sportsmanlike conduct. And so Rico Dowdle's saying, wait, and by the way, they did it again during the skit. Hingle McCringleberry scores another touchdown. 1 hip thrust, 2 hip thrust, walks to the sideline, no penalty. So you learn the rule. Okay, 2 hip thrusts are fine, 3, that's where the flag comes out. Rico Dowdle does back-to-back hip thrusts, doesn't do the third, walks to the sideline, throw the flag. So Rico Dowdle, and I love what he's doing here, okay? I love this, okay? Because he was fined by the NFL for it as well. He, all money is going to be donated to the children. He started a GoFundMe page to kind of protest this, all money is going to be donated directly to the Children's Home Society of North Carolina. And as of earlier today, they've raised $20,000. So first of all, it's for a great cause. So kudos to the charitable effort by Rico and by everybody who's donated. But I don't know. I just saw this. I'm like, how do you flag him for that? Like, did these officials, did they not watch Key and Peele? Which is one of the greatest comedy shows that Comedy Central's, I think it was Comedy Central, right? That they've ever put out. I mean, Chappelle's show's pretty darn, it's almost undefeated, right? In as far as 21st century Comedy Central. But listen, Hingle McCringleberry, yeah, substitute teacher, Obama anger translator. I mean, they had some bangers back in the day. So yeah, shout out to Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele. I even saw Keegan, who's a diehard Lions fan, by the way. I saw him do a skit, because for those that haven't seen the substitute teacher skit, if you haven't, like, what are you doing? It's go on YouTube. Stay on the show. But after the show's over, go on YouTube and see what's up with that, because it's fantastic. Basically, he's a substitute teacher. He is pronouncing all these white kids' names wrong. It's like a whole thing. You know, Jacqueline is Jaqueline, and Blake is Block Aaron, which is, I mean, that bit is literally what I play when I play this.
You done messed up, Aaron.
So there you go. Like, it's yeah. I couldn't believe it. How do you fine him for that? That goes directly against what referees and comedy skits, at least, are supposed to do. I was very outraged by that. I was very outraged. Okay, we're going to take another break. When we come back, Week 10 NFL predictions, including Bryson's Bleak Bet, my ups of the week, and of course, my favorite segment of all time, If I Were a Bet Man. We'll be back in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. So as we end every single Friday show, which, by the way, before I even say that, you may have noticed, longtime viewers or listeners of the show might notice, no Vol View today. A, it's because Tennessee's in a bye. And B, I basically already kind of did the Vol View on Wednesday. I guess that sort of counts, especially for the Vols being on a bye week. Doing the Josh Heupel segment, which, by the way, is on YouTube now. Feel free to check it out. The short version is available on YouTube, TikTok, IG. The full version is on the YouTube channel now as we speak on Carving It Up. Feel free to check it out. Subscribe to Carving It Up on YouTube. Subscribe to the Grid Network on YouTube, and follow all my social media platforms down there. Instagram, X, TikTok, and as well as on Twitch. Like I said, just started on Wednesday via Twitch. We're going to be streaming the show from there in addition to the other streaming platforms. So feel free to follow on there as well and check out our other content. Looks like you got a comment here from Shad Henson 73-9. He says, Sean Payton now coaching the team with the most penalty yards and most punting yards in the NFL. Okay, so let's get right to predictions. This is how we end every Friday's show. I love doing it. Even though, do we have to pull up the graphic? I guess we do. Go ahead and put it up there. Like that. This is, again, overall not bad. Against the spread, could do better. Upset of the week, 4-5 is not bad for upset of the week, but just to be clear. Bleak bet 5-4. If I were a bet man at 10-17, that is I'm ashamed. I could go undefeated this week. I could go undefeated next week. And I would I'd still be under 500. Week 9, 6-8. Week 9 gets a spread 4-10. So it was week 9 was not kind to me. The only thing that was kind to me was that the Steelers won. But even still, I picked against the Steelers because Indianapolis was going to expose our bad pass defense. Which Steelers play the Chargers this Sunday night. I'll obviously predict that at the very end. So let's go and get the background music and start our Week 10 NFL predictions. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. All right, right off the bat. We're not wasting any time. I'm going to start with my upset of the week. In the morning, in Berlin, give me the Atlanta Falcons over the Indianapolis Colts, 24-23. Atlanta plus 6.5, and to win this puppy outright, 24-23. And here's why, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, this is a Colts team. It's going to be without DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner was just put on IR. He's an outstanding defensive lineman for them for a long time. He's been the anchor of that D-line. He's on IR. He's out for the next month or so. That's bad news against Atlanta Falcons team that's got this guy by the name of Bijan Robinson, who could be running the football very effectively. Also, Michael Penix Jr. last week played arguably his best game of the season against the New England Patriots. On the road, Drake London was unguardable in that game. 3 touchdowns receiving. Maybe this Atlanta Falcons offense is starting to find a little bit of a rhythm. Starting to find, maybe in this game, a little bit of a balance. For Indianapolis, here's what I worry about. Coming into this game, or last week's game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, they've given up 9 sacks total in the season. They gave up over half that, 5 against Pittsburgh. You say, well, yeah, Pittsburgh's got a great D-line. TJ Watt and Hayward and Highsmith and all these guys. Atlanta's got a pretty good D-line too, because last I checked last week, 6 sacks against Drake May and the New England Patriots. Some of that is because Drake May can hold the ball too long. Daniel Jones does the same thing. Because a lot of Indianapolis' offense is a lot of deep shots, a lot of downfield attempts to Alec Pierce and to Michael Pittman, Tyler Warren to a certain degree, although that's more so in the short screen game, red zone, third down. But that's a big part of their offense. Atlanta can be able to snuff that out. So, listen, I said I would not bet in air quotes, because the segment is called If I Were a Bet Man, the rest of the season. Not touching Atlanta. I didn't say I wouldn't go with them in the episode of the week. So, give me the Falcons in Berlin, baby. First NFL game ever played in Berlin. Over the Indianapolis Colts, 24-23. Atlanta pulls the upset. All right. From that game to low-scoring affair. At least I think it's going to be. Cleveland Browns, New York Jets from the Meadowlands. The Browns are road favorites, -2.5 at MetLife Stadium. So both teams are coming off of a bye. The Jets in their last game scored 39 points. Offense came to life. Of course, they were playing the Cincinnati Bengals defense, which I think myself, and I think I could get 10 of you guys watching right now. We could create an offense, makeshift O-line, receivers, quarterback, running back, tight end, and I think we could score 30 on the Bengals defense. So that doesn't mean anything for the Jets to do what they did a couple weeks ago. However, the fact that the Cleveland Browns defense is sensational, with Myles Garrett in particular. The offense is, what did J.J. Watt call Andy Dalton the Red Ryder BB gun? That's kind of what this Browns offense is. There's no big plays. The offensive line's not great. The running game is okay with Quinshon Judkins at times. But Dylan Gabriel's just as limited as I thought he would be coming out of Oregon. He's small, doesn't have arm strength, doesn't move that well. There's a reason he stayed in college for as long as he did. There's a reason he played for 3 programs. It doesn't work. Like, at some point, I think in the next 3 weeks, we are going to see Shedeur Sanders. And I think he'll be the starter for the remainder of the season. Browns will evaluate if he's the guy. If not, they got 2 picks in the first round of next year's draft. They'll take a quarterback. So because of those limitations, and I know the Jets, they moved on from Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner. The future is bright, and vibes are a real thing in the NFL. In that stadium, and all these things, Never forget Brian Flores when he took over the Miami Dolphins, and they themselves had a fire sale. They moved on from Mika Fitzpatrick. They moved on from a number of guys. Brian Flores took over the Dolphins in 2019. They were way worse than this year's Jets are. They were getting blown up by 40, 50 points. And then, like, second half of the year around Thanksgiving, we get in December, they kind of start to figure it out, and they win a few games. And they knock Brady and the Patriots out of getting a bye in the last game of the regular season. Ryan Fitzpatrick coming out clutch at the end. I could see a similar trajectory for this New York Jets team. So give me the Jets, baby, in kind of an upset. They're at home, 20-16, low-scoring affair, defensive game. But, yeah, I'm not a Dylan Gabriel believer. Not that I'm a Justin Fields believer per se, but certainly more so than Gabriel. And I think the Jets have a level of momentum, even coming off the trade deadline where they lost their two best defensive players, where, hey, the future looks bright. Let's build something in the regular season now that we can feel good about moving forward. So give me the Jets, 20-16 over the Cleveland Browns. Divisional matchup, AFC South. Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Houston Texans. The Jags on the road are favored -1.5. Big reason for that is that CJ Stroud is out for this game. He had a concussion early in the game, kind of a dirty hit. Broncos are maybe at the hest of Sean Payton, Bountygate, as Russell Wilson reminded us a few weeks ago. Gotten away with a couple of dirty hits on CJ Stroud, on Geno Smith. Keep your eye out for Denver doing some shady stuff on that side of the ball. But regardless, CJ Stroud's out this week. It's going to be Davis Mills. Longest neck quarterback since Peyton Manning. And Mike Glennon, for that matter. For Jacksonville, their offense is in a weird spot because Travis Hunter is on IR. He's going to be out for a while. They've already announced Brian Thomas Jr. is out for this game. So it's like, holy crap, what's going to happen to their receiving core? Well, they just traded for Jacoby Myers from the Las Vegas Raiders. So they get a little bit of pop in that offense in addition to Travis Etienne, in addition to an offensive line that's played very, very well this season. We know Liam Cohen is an offensive coach, and their offense is what won them the game last week against the Vegas Raiders. Trevor Lawrence coming up big in the end, the go-ahead touchdown in overtime, all of it. Of course, they're playing Houston Texans defense that is, along with Denver, arguably the best defense in all of football. So I do see low-scoring game, but I think a Jacksonville team that has kind of lived off of turnovers, feasted off of turnovers, get a couple off of Davis Mills, set up the offense in short field, and I'll take the Jacksonville Jaguars to win 23-19 over the Houston Texans and continue to be a playoff caliber team. Listen, I told you Jacksonville's going to be a playoff team coming into the season, and I picked them to win the division. And if my picks hold, by the way, if Atlanta upsets Indianapolis and Jacksonville takes care of business against Houston, all of a sudden, the Jags and the Colts will be tied in the loss column while playing 2 more games the rest of the year. And we know the Colts do not win in Jacksonville for a decade. They do not win in Jacksonville. So, something to keep your eye out for, to say the very, very least. Okay, it's now time for Bryson and Bleak bets. One game each every week that I've absolutely zero confidence in predicting, but hey, you got to predict them all. I'm looking at a game featuring the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. I don't know what to do. Because Buffalo's favor -8.5. You're like, oh, Miami's terrible. They won 2 games this year. They maybe quitting their coach, and they probably quit on their quarterback. And Tyreek's out, and they just traded Jalen Phillips. Like, what the heck? 2 things. Number 1, letdown in the NFL is a very real thing. Is that if you're Buffalo and you're just coming off this big time, you beat. Now maybe there won't be a letdown because Buffalo always beats Kansas City in the regular season before they get eliminated in the postseason. But you beat Kansas City. You made Mahomes uncomfortable. You forced Mahomes to complete under 50% of his throws. You got a good pass rush on him. You're feeling good about yourself. And now you go to Miami. And we know the distractions of Miami. That goes without saying. But more so than that, divisional familiarity. These are 2 teams that know each other well. Mike McDaniel, Sean McDermott, coaches each other in a playoff game that, by the way, Mike McDaniel, Skylar Thompson almost beat Buffalo on the road in that spot. So Miami has had, Buffalo's owned the series. Miami has had success in spots, offensively speaking. And we know the Bills, despite a good pass rush, although Hoyt is gone for the season with an Achilles, secondary leaves a lot to be desired. I could see this being a little interesting early, kind of a shootout-ish. I could see the Dolphins maybe like opening up an early lead and be like, oh, could Miami mess with Buffalo's season there? Could they help the Patriots in the AFC East? Second half, Buffalo makes adjustments. They pull away. I'm going to take Buffalo -8.5 to win 34-20 over the Miami Dolphins. There's just something fishy about this game. I don't know what it is. Something feels weird about this game. But the Bills win 34-20. Dolphins have a terrible defense. So the faucet will, the pipes will break eventually off the pressure of the Bills offense that will put on Miami's defense. But something feels weird about it. Something feels weird about it. Okay, New England Patriots, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tom Brady's old team. In Tampa, the Bucks are 2.5-point favorites. So these are two teams with only 2 losses in the year. Patriots 7-2, Bucks 6-2. Bucks are coming off of their bye week, still not terribly healthy. I think they do get Luke Gedeke back to their O-line, which is huge. But Chris Godwin's out, and Bucky Irving is out. So they're dealing with injuries. Patriots are dealing with Ramondre Stevenson out, as well as Keyshawn Boutte. So both teams are dealing with their fair share of running back and wide receiver injuries. Something that I have worried about with this Patriots team for the last couple of weeks is that as incredibly as Drake May is playing this year, whether it's because of him holding the ball too long, whether it's the offensive line not quite being up to snuff, keep in mind, this is still a rebuilding process to a certain degree with this Patriots roster. They're not great in pass pro. And last I checked, the Tampa Bay Bucks can get after the quarterback. Todd Bowles is a defensive coach. This game is in Tampa. Trust me, I've been there. That is a legitimate home field advantage. At some point, the winning streak's going to end. Tampa's come off a bye. Well-coached team's off a bye. Y'all know I like them. I think I'm going to go Tampa Bay in the spot, 26-21 over the New England Patriots. I think it's a good game. I think it's a back-and-forth affair. Bucks end up pulling it out in the end. The defense is able to get a stop on Drake May late. But Tampa Bay wins 26-21 and hand the Patriots their first loss in nearly 2 months. Still think New England will be fine. They're still certainly AFC East race, in the number 1 seed race as well. But I've got the Buccaneers beating them in this spot. All right, it is now time for my favorite segment of all time. At this point, y'all know what I'm talking about. It is called
Bettin Man.
If I Were a Bettin Man. I am looking at the New York Giants going on the road to take on the Chicago Bears. The Bears from the Windy City. The Bears are favored -4.5 in this spot. So, wait just a second. You mean to tell me that after my preseason prediction, and boy, is it coming true, we saw glimpses of it, or big glimpses, but again, it's Cincinnati's defense so terrible. We saw glimpses of this on this past Sunday. I said this back in August. We'll even have to pull the tape if this continues to go in the right direction. Is that, the Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, football marriage, so to speak, it's going to be a little bumpy at first because Caleb's never worked with a coach like Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson's never worked with a quarterback like Caleb Williams. It's going to be a bit rocky at first, and it was. Remember that blowout loss? They got housed by Detroit in week 2. It's like, oh boy, this may not work. Caleb may not be the guy. And slowly but surely, it's starting to come together. Caleb multiple times this year has come out clutch against the Raiders. Again, it was more so the running game that came up clutch than that last drive against Washington, but Caleb was clutch against Cincinnati. You say, well, Colston Loveland should have been tackled. He should have been tackled, 100%. That's a big boy throw by Caleb Williams. That's where he's at his best. Fitting the ball into those tight windows, those over the middle. Caleb's arm strength is off the charts. It's the deep throws where, dude, put a little bit more arc on it as opposed to throwing it on a line, which is something that I think he's struggled with and still needs to continue to grow at. But I said, this were my exact words, give it around Halloween, early November, they're going to start to figure it out. And they've been winning games despite them not figuring it out. Well, obviously the offense saved the day last week against the Bengals. And against the Giants defense, as great as that D-line is, Chicago's O-line, really good. Week by week, it's just gotten better and better. That's something the offensive coaches like a Ben Johnson specialize in. I think the Bears are playing with momentum. I think they know, hold on a second, forget playoffs. We have a legitimate chance to win the division at this point in time. Give me, if I were a bet man, I love the Bears. -4.5, 27-21 over the Giants. Again, they do have some flaws in the defense. Don't get me wrong, they have some flaws. I like what the Bears are doing right now. They continue to keep pace in the NFC North, and they win this game 27-21 over the New York Football Giants. If I were a bet man, I like the Bears -4.5. What do we got next? We've got the Baltimore Ravens and the Minnesota Vikings from Minnesota. So the Ravens in this game are favored -4.5. This was almost a bleak bet game, and the only reason I say that is this. It's a Brian Flores defense. The numbers aren't that good this year, but trust me, Brian Flores, defensive coach, one of the best in the NFL. Problem is Baltimore's offense with Lamar Jackson is a whole different monster. I've done segments on this going back to 2022 when he's missed time. Is that, be it with Tyler Huntley, be it with Cooper Rush, who was never a good fit to be Lamar's backup in the first place, the offense struggles to put up double digits. With Lamar Jackson, they can put up 40 in your head in an instant. Because he's a dynamic player. He's one of the most gifted players to ever play the position. He's one of the most dynamic players to ever play the position we've ever seen. Extra rest for Baltimore. I like that. Minnesota is coming off of a big-time win in Detroit, and Minnesota, I've said it all the time on this show, going back to last year. We talk about home field advantage. We kind of just say it in passing. U.S. Bank Stadium is a legit home field advantage. with the skull chant, when they blow the horn in the game. That is a real home field advantage, almost like a college-like atmosphere there. It is legit. It gets loud in there. So that's something the Ravens will have to contend with. And I still have concerns about Baltimore's defense. I do. Like, I need to see more before I'm like, okay, their defense is fixed. Zach Orr's gotten this unit, all fixed up. I just don't think J.J. McCarthy, over the course of a 60-minute game, maybe early with an opening script with Kevin O'Connell, but beyond there, can he do it? So I do like the Ravens to win this game, 28-20 in the battle of the purple teams. 28-20, Ravens over the Minnesota Vikings, and the Ravens do cover -4.5. I just talked about this team and one of the players on this team, Carolina Panthers, who are hosting the New Orleans Saints from Charlotte. The Panthers, the 5-4, I didn't mean to hit the table again. The 5-4 Carolina Panthers are a 5.5? Yeah, 5.5 point favorite against the middling Saints, who at this point are probably, or at least Saints fans are probably hoping they lose more than they win so they can get as high of a pick as possible in the draft and take a quarterback. So it's going to be Tyler Shough again. He's really, really struggled. I wasn't a believer in Tyler Shough going back to college. Again, anybody who has to say 7 years until they were literally forced to go to the NFL, like to me, there's got to be some limitation there. I thought it was insane that he went over Shedeur Sanders. I thought that was crazy. Regardless, Carolina's strength in this, this stretch where they've got, won 5 of their last 7 games. It's really not come off of the quarterback position. Bryce Young has had moments. He's been good in the fourth quarter of games, but he barely threw for 100 yards last week. Like Bryce, we know, has some limitations. It's the running game. It's their offensive line in terms of, run blocking. With Rico Dowdle mostly. Chuba Hubbard is back healthy. He's basically the backup now to Rico Dowdle because of how Rico's played. I think the Saints are middling. I know divisional familiarity. I get that should come in fruition. I think the Panthers win this game 23-16 over the New Orleans Saints. They control the clock. They do what they got to do. And by the end of week 10, we're in the second half of the regular season, folks. Like we are, playoffs are still a ways away, but we're getting that point where the haves and have-nots are starting to separate. Carolina will be 6-4. Carolina will be 6-4 and not that far behind Tampa for the division. So kudos to the Panthers. What do we got in our next game? Oh, here we go. Cardinals and Seahawks from Seattle. So the Seahawks are a 6.5 point favorite in this game. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of went back and forth on this one because on one hand, y'all saw it. Go and put up Bryson's best 10 from this week. Do we got it? Here we go. Y'all see where I got the Seahawks? I think right now there are 2 teams to me better than the Seattle Seahawks today. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams. Seattle is playing out of their mind right now, and Sam Darnold has been playing out of his mind this season. Go and put up the Sam Darnold stats. We have the Sam Darnold stats. That says Sam Darnold against the Commanders, but that's his stats for the totality of his career. 52 touchdowns, 18 picks, 67% completion, 255 yards, 104 rating, and a 20-6 record. That's with multiple systems, multiple different coaches, and multiple different receiving corps. Seattle adding Rashid Shaheed at the deadline was a sneaky good pick. I've always liked that kid. Very fast, solid right runner, can beat you over the top. Now you got to worry about him along with Jackson Smith and Jigba. That offense is legit in Seattle. However, for Arizona, their offense has been legit ever since Jacoby Brissett took over. So much so where Kyler Murray's on IR, it almost feels like a little bit of a soft benching by the Cardinals because objectively, the offense has been better with Jacoby Brissett than it was with Kyler Murray. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a career high in catches last week against Dallas. Trey McBride is a fantasy darling, one of the top tight ends in the NFL. They've really invested in the defensive side of the football. Will Johnson and Walter Nolan, who made his debut and looked great in his debut. Looks like everything the Cardinals hoped he would be coming out of Ole Miss. So I think this is a spot where, again, divisional familiarity. I want to talk about this all the time. I like the Cardinals plus 6.5, but that's the Seahawks minus 6.5. That should say Cardinals plus 6.5. Seattle wins 27-24, but again, that little bit of a typo there. I think the Cardinals cover plus 6.5, but Seattle wins outright 27-24 in a close game. A game that I think could come down to like a walk-off field goal. All right, Detroit Lions and the Washington Commanders from our nation's capital. The Lions are favored minus 7.5 in a playoff rematch game. If y'all know anything about me, y'all know I love Dan Campbell. If I know anything about Dan Campbell, these are the type of games he gets his teams ready to play. A spot where, they don't believe in us. Hey, the Packers are, top of the division, and here come the Bears, and we just lost a disappointing game to the Minnesota Vikings, and people are like, Detroit's good. Like, they're good. Don't get me wrong. They'll probably be in the playoffs, but 7 seed today. It's November. This is a spot against the Washington Commanders. Without Jaden Daniels, by the way. Marcus Mariota's been fine, but he's no Jaden Daniels. It's a team that knocked the Lions out of the playoffs. And this is a team that, personally, for me, I'm a Steelers fan, but if I had to pick an NFC team, it would obviously be the Detroit Lions. There's no question. Y'all know that. I've said that for years on this show. As a guy who picked the Lions to get the 1 seed and go to the Super Bowl last year, when they went 15-2, got the 1 seed, I'm like, oh, here we go. Playoffs run through Detroit. They're going to go to the Super Bowl. Here we go. And Jane Daniels, the Washington Commanders, walked into Ford Field, and the Lions left the 2024 season without a single playoff win. I know I wasn't as heartbroken as Lions fans. That is hurt. I'm not going to lie. That hurt. So a revenge spot against a vulnerable Washington team with a bad defense. Y'all know what it is.
What do I have, Bettin Man?
If I were a bet man, Lions, baby, -7.5 the whole way. 34-17 over the Washington Commanders. I know I took Detroit last week to cover. A different spot here, though. Vulnerable Washington team, bad Washington defense. Revenge spot for Detroit. Oh, this is Dan Campbell's playground, baby. Kneecaps. Play the sound. Play it.
Kneecap. 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 Kneecap.
Oh, there's gonna be a lot of kneecaps bitten off at the Commander Stadium. Lions win and Lions cover. All right, we got our next matchup featuring the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers, and this is the final game for
What do I have, Bettin Man?
If I were a bet man, divisional matchup. 2 teams and 2 coaches in particular that are very familiar with one another. Both took their respective jobs in 2017, McVay with the Rams and Shanahan with the Niners. This is a battle potentially to be in first place, depending on what happens with the Seattle-Arizona game. Potentially to be in first place in the NFC West. Niners, per usual, battered with injuries. Mac Jones is going to start again. Rams lost a game that they shouldn't have. That was Mac Jones' best game of the year against the Los Angeles Rams on that Thursday night game a month ago. So, yeah, you know the Rams and Tendos will be up. With that said, and I got the Rams number 2 on Bryce's best 10. I love the Rams. 4.5 is a lot of points for a road divisional game with 2 coaches that are familiar with each other on the road against the coach who's had a lot more success against the other than vice versa. Shanahan has a winning record against Sean McVay despite a significant talent gap between the two in terms of what they've had at the quarterback position. I know I've doubted the Niners this year. I could see them pulling an upset. I'm going to take the Rams to win. 27-24, 2 27-24 games in the NFC West this weekend. Niners plus 4.5 is the play. It just is. Again, I love the Rams. I think they're a true Super Bowl contender in the NFC. But man, these games where they go to San Francisco, I don't love that line. I'm not going to lie to you. I really don't. So if I were a bet man, Niners plus 4.5, but the Rams win this game outright. And finally, Pittsburgh Steelers. My Pittsburgh Steelers going on the road to LA to take on the Chargers. Chargers are favored -2.5, which feels like a fair line. Here's what I'll say. As we know, this Chargers offense is not the same without their 2 tackles, and we knew Rashawn Slater would be gone for the year. Joe Alt was there. The O-line still looks great. He went down. O-line looked horrible. He came back. The O-line and the offense in general looked fantastic. Now he's down for the rest of the season with an ankle injury, which is devastating for him, devastating for the Chargers. For as many concerns as I have about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, of which I still have many, particularly the back end, the strength of the Pittsburgh Steelers, forget defense, entire football team, is the defensive line. It's TJ Watt, it's Alex Highsmith, it's Cam Hayward, and Keanu Benton, and it's Nick Herbig. It's all these guys that got to Daniel Jones 5 times last week, made his life a living hell at Acrisure Stadium. Speaking of stadiums, speaking of Acrisure Stadium, it's not going to be played there, it's going to be played at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California. But if I know anything about Los Angeles Chargers home games, sometimes about 3 or 4 times a year, they don't feel like home games. Pittsburgh Steelers Nation are going to take over SoFi Stadium. That's going to be a home game for Pittsburgh. Terrible towels going to be waving. It is going to be, Justin Herbert's going to have to go to a silent count. All right? Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers offense can do what they got to do. Be efficient. Am I concerned about Aaron and about the Steelers offensive line facing a Jesse Minter coach defense? You darn right I am. This to me feels like more of a game where the Steelers offense gets exposed more so than the defense. Which is why I think the defense kind of steps up. Due to the injuries to Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater, who was gone before the season started. Due to the fact that this is going to be basically not a soft home game, a legitimate home game. Except they're just flying to this home game in Los Angeles. Give me the Steelers, baby. We win this game outright. Plus 2.5. We win this outright over the Chargers. 24-20. Pittsburgh again. with the Ravens winning earlier in that day, which I think they will. Steelers need to get a W. I think we will. This is a game, again, this is a game I thought was going to be a loss after we'd lost the back-to-back games to drop to 4-3. But with the injuries right now to the Chargers offensive line, like there's just no, they can't protect against the Steelers defensive line. If you're going to double team TJ Watt, well, guess what? Alex Highsmith, like he had last week, is probably going to get a couple of sacks. Cam Hayward's going to knock down passes at the line of scrimmage. Old man Cam, he's going to keep doing his thing. So I do like my Steelers. I'll be honest. I like my Steelers in the spot. Against the Chargers, I have more concerns, ironically, about the offense in this game than I do the defense. But we'll see how it plays out. And with that, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as on X, Facebook, IG, and on Twitch. Again, we're new on Twitch, so shout out to the audience that is watching on that platform as well. Check out all of our social media platforms. We're all right there below. You got Instagram, X, TikTok. Subscribe to Carving It Up on YouTube. Subscribe to the Grid Network. Matter of fact, go and put up the Grid logo. That's GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. Also, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time. We've done it. This is our first year doing it. Check out the Saturday morning tailgate. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time, myself and Tim Barnard and Arthur Hirsch will be kicking off your college football Saturday. We've got a ton to talk about. We're going to lead the show discussing the first college football playoff committee, top 25. We're going to talk about, I know Tim's going to be hot about this, is the Florida Gators probably getting screwed, against the Georgia Bulldogs last week in Jacksonville. He's going to have a lot to say about that. We'll give you our personal top 25s, our curated segments for my Vols, Tim's Gators, Arthur's Ohio State Buckeyes, and of course, the end of the show, as is customary for any half-decent college football show, we're going to make our picks for the weekend. Got some big matchups. You got BYU, Texas Tech. You got matchups featuring Texas A&M and Missouri. Even Bama LSU, I feel like could be closer than people think. I'm just going to say, I think it could be a little weird. That's all I'll say. Okay, so have a great weekend, everybody. Check out Saturday Morning Tailgate again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time. We'll be back on this show Monday, as always, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific time, with a ton to talk about revolving in the National Football League. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Don't let me down, Steelers. Please don't let me down. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.